Welcome to Beyond Possible Club podcast. This is a space for dreamers, achievers, and anybody who wants to transcend their limitations. I am Julia Borgan, your host, and I believe that nothing is truly impossible, no matter what obstacles and challenges you face in life. And you might already be living your epic dream life, but still have a list of things that you really, really want, but you think are impossible. Or maybe you feel really stuck in your situation, in a relationship, in your body, and you feel like even like having a normal life would seem out of reach right now. So wherever you are, this podcast is for you. So let's get started. This is season 1, episode 1. It's all brand new. And I'm so happy to start with the very, very juicy topic of pain science and welcome my guest today, Jen Uschold. And we will talk about biopsychosocial approach to pain management that will help people both heal and achieve peak performance. So welcome, Jen.
Thank you. I am so excited to be your first guest.
I know. And it happened completely by coincidence. I posted something on LinkedIn, tagged you because it was my contemplation about pain. And we started talking, and here we are. I had the dream of starting this podcast for a couple of years, and talking to you just made it happen. And then I realized what a perfect topic, because talking about going beyond pain, both physical, emotional. It's such an obstacle for getting to the life that we want to live. So let me just start. I'll read I have your bio introduction here. I might stumble through so many certifications that you have, so you can correct me or add anything that I missed. So Jen Uschold is a physical therapist.
Yes.
First of all, with over 30 years of experience, and she specializes in pain science. Jen is a national board certified health and wellness coach, and she completed a fellowship in pain science. As a certified positive intelligence coach as well, she integrates mental fitness techniques with lifestyle medicine and empowers clients to achieve holistic well-being. Now she's also a program director for certification at lifestyle medicine and in lifestyle medicine at Evidence in Motion. So she is a very passionate educator and advocate for patient-centered care. Outside her professional roles, Jen is a proud mom of 3, and she brings laughter, connection, and curiosity to all aspects of life.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. That's my goal. That was a fine intro. We can leave it at that. And probably other things will just come out organically as we're chatting with other things I've done. But that probably isn't as interesting to your crowd as our topic of pain.
Yeah, we have so much to dive in. I expect we're going to have part 2, part 3. So there will be some things that we will be double clicking on, and some things we'll put a pin on and come back later, because we can easily be here for 3 hours. So I think the best way to start is actually for listeners, for viewers, to hear the definition of pain, because everybody experiences pain. But if you ask people, what is pain? Define it. That will be pretty impossible to define what pain actually is. So give us, I want to say your definition of pain, but I don't know if it's your definition of pain or it's the definition of pain and perspective that you're taking as part of the job that you're doing.
Okay. I'm going to combine the kind of 3 main definitions of pain. The first, it comes from the International Association for the Study of Pain. So they have the official definition, which they just changed and revamped a couple of years ago. And then there's another one from Lorimer Moseley, who is a big pain scientist. I think he's in Australia. And then combining that just with the pain science that I have learned through my mentor, Adrian Lowe, and Evidence in Motion. A very simple definition of pain is an output of the brain 100% of the time based on input from the tissues, your body, as well as your environment. And it is in response to the level of real or perceived threat. It's a mouthful. And people get a little edgy when I say it's 100% an output from the brain. This is by no means suggesting that your pain isn't real, because all pain is real. Pain scientists have never scanned fake pain. However, the complexity of pain, it is sourced as an output from the brain rather than an output from the tissues.
Mhm. And you talk about pain also as an experience.
I talk about pain as an experience because that is what it is. It is information, and then we need to decide what to do with that information. And sometimes we want to respond right away. Maybe we put our hand on the hot stove. Yep, let's take our hand off right away. Maybe we feel a cramp and we are just 5 minutes from crossing the finish line of a marathon. Maybe we can table that sensation, that experience, until we cross the finish line. So it is an experience, it is information, and then we have to decide what to do with it. That's the hard part, because there are so many factors to consider.
I also heard you talk about that we don't have pain receptors.
That is correct.
And what, maybe give us example what receptors we do have, like in comparison, and what does it mean we don't have pain receptors?
Okay, I'm going to start with what the types of receptors we do have, and then you and I have talked about how important stories are, and so I'd actually like to tell you and your listeners a story and help them understand a little bit more about the nervous system. So what type of receptors do we have? We have receptors in our body that tell us that it's 50 degrees out or it's 100 degrees out. So things that respond to temperature. We have receptors that respond to stress and immunity and position and blood flow. So there are many, many, many types of sensors or receptors. However, we do not have pain nerves, nor do we have pain sensors. Do you want to understand this a little more?
Yes, please.
All right.
I'm like clicking, click, click. I want to know. Tell me, like ChatGPT, and now ask, do you want me to tell you more? It's like, yes, please tell me more.
There you go. Okay, so it starts with this. Julia, if you stepped on a rusty nail, do you want to know?
Yes, I definitely want to know.
You might be surprised how many people say no. Why do you want to know that you've stepped on a rusty nail?
Also, I can deal with it. Well, actually, maybe I'm a little bit cheating. I heard the story before, and I heard that people saying, I better not know. I was like,
Well,
no, damn it,
that's
I want to
okay.
know. I
But
can
you
get
want to know because you
infection.
want to deal with it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So that pain that you felt is information. It got you to stop and look and say, oh, I've stepped on a nail. I need to do something about this. So now your nervous system is made up of nerves and your spinal cord and your brain. That's our very simple nervous system description. It's 400 nerves. That's a lot of nerves. And they're all connected like a crazy highway. So for you and your listeners, what is 45 miles from where you are, maybe about 60 kilometers? If we stretched all those nerves end to end, that's how far we'd get. So we've got a lot of crazy nerves. Now, all of those 400 nerves, they have a little bit of electricity in them all the time. It lets us know that we're alive. So that's really good. Now, we're going to go back to the nail. So again, when you step on that nail, it's not yet pain. What we have is a danger sensor. The fancy word is a nociceptor. And that takes the information up to the brain for processing. And if you remember our definition, it's processing based on information from the body as well as the environment. And if it crosses a particular threshold in the brain, that is when you'll feel pain. So do you think that your foot will be sore for a few days if you step on a nail?
Definitely.
And when you feel that soreness, are you causing additional tissue damage?
When I feel, oh, those are hard questions. No.
Correct. So you can feel the soreness and the pain. You're not causing additional damage. It's just still that this alarm is a little extra sensitive. And your nervous system is doing the work of getting back to that baseline little buzz. So we talk about your nervous system as a super high tech alarm.
Yeah, and I also think that it's almost it's protective that if the part is sore, I'm also not gonna overuse it too much, right? Is it also
That
not
that
just healing, like there is pain that probably there because of healing process? And also, I guess it's kind of useful to know that something there is not 100% okay. So I'm not gonna dance on that leg.
that gets us into different topics.
Okay.
So, yes, we do want to be giving it the environment to heal efficiently. However, too often people think doing nothing is the way we heal efficiently. However, movement is actually one of our most important strategies. So the physiology of the healing of that soreness on your foot is it's bringing inflammatory chemicals to the area so that it can heal the tissues. And inflammation and pain do go together. So it's not necessarily that you need to be doing nothing. It's
Right.
just information. It's still information. So the problem we have is that about 1 in 4 people in the US, and it's really not that different worldwide, the alarm doesn't come back down to baseline. So I like to describe this with a house alarm. And I think if a brick went through your window, do you want your house alarm to go off?
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
Easy.
what if somebody messed with the sensitivity of your house alarm and your
Mm.
house alarm went off if a leaf hit the window? Is your
Wow.
house okay?
My house is okay. I
Your
might
house
be very annoyed. I might be in emotional pain at this
You
point.
might be annoyed. However, it's not the house that's the problem. So I ask my clients, is it possible that your body's okay? And our focus needs to be the sensitivity of the alarm versus the state of the tissues where you feel pain.
And what is the statistic again? You mentioned that the percentage of people that have that sensitive
Almost
alarm,
1 in 4.
1 in 4.
1 in 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? And I just want to actually just jump into practical tool in like what is there to do for those people and how do they know that they're 1 in 4 and now what? That they're, I don't want to say overreacting, but their nervous system is overreacting to the pain.
Yeah, they are definitely not overreacting because I will say this as many times as I need to in the world, all pain is real. Their nervous system, if we go back to that definition, it is an output of the brain based on the level of real or perceived threat. So people who have a highly sensitized nervous system and they have chronic pain, they have a nervous system that is perceiving a threat that is not there. Their nervous system is responding to a leaf rather than a brick. And so your question is about what do we do about this? That's a huge question. And broadly, we divide pain experiences into 3 basic categories. And depending on what the dominant piece is for the client, our treatments will be different. So let's take an ankle sprain if you're a runner and you did that 3 days ago. That we would call more of a, I'm not going to name the buckets. We're just going to call that that bucket. And we do much more traditional physical therapy for those people. We want to get the swelling down. We want to get their mobility back. We need to get their strength up. So those people, they're going to recover in 2 to 4 weeks. Now, sometimes those people can then turn into more of a chronic situation. Our middle bucket, this is somebody who's had a particular nerve injury, or if they've had a crush injury to their nerve, maybe even somebody that's had the diagnosis of carpal tunnel, we treat that differently than we treat this first bucket. And then the third, the most complex bucket, is the third one. These are the people, the 1 in 4, that have chronic pain. And we have a program called PNE Plus, pain neuroceptive, pain. Wow, why am I forgetting? Pain neuroscience education, too many neuro words. So the Plus program it's 22 evidence-based approaches to help people ease their pain. So this bucket, you talked about the word biopsychosocial. There's much more of a dominant psychosocial aspect in the third bucket. So we treat them very different than the person who had an ankle sprain 3 days ago. The other truth is that every single client has something of all 3 buckets, but the amount of each of them is different and also varies during recovery.
Okay, so I want to describe what's happening in my brain right now, what experience I'm having. My very curious brain just really wants to know what the names of those buckets are.
Okay. So
I won't be able to sleep. Tell us the name of the buckets.
So the first bucket is nociceptive pain. Remember, we
Okay.
talked about the danger sensors, right? So that's nociceptive. That is more tissue driven. That has predictable things that ease and aggravate pain. That's bucket number 1. Bucket number 2, this is the peripheral neuropathic bucket. And this is more that nerve crush injury. Each nerve has a particular pattern. We can see like anatomical and neurological patterns to the pain that these people are experiencing. And then the third bucket, this is called central sensitization. This is where the brain is in a hyper vigilant, hyper aware state. It is doing its job too well. The changes in the brain are significant. And so this is why we treat them differently, because we want to shift their brain back to a place of safety.
Okay, so I will trust you going forward when you don't want to name something because I regret asking this question. I understand why you chose to omit the names. They are not sexy names. Okay, and so I want to come back with kind of to, what is generally your approach to helping anybody to deal with the pain, to go beyond pain? What is your basically almost wish for general population to know about pain? And I'm hinting at the 4 pillars, basically. To ask a question, tell us about the 4 pillars. I know about the 4 pillars, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually zoom out from that.
Okay.
So the way I approach pain is, first I have to know the client's story, and I need to know what it is they want. Because that you talk about 4 pillars, we'll get into that in a moment, but that's going to inform me of, well, this pillar is a non-discussion at this point, or they're really excited to dive into this particular pillar. And so it all starts with the client. And so for people that are listening, my suggestion is to find a clinician or a coach or a therapist who is really going to put you in the driver's seat of your care, as opposed to mandating what you do, being all diehard about things. So that's my one little side. So the 4 pillars, these are our main well-researched areas to help people reduce pain. And the first one is education. It is fascinating. We have fMRI studies showing people's brains calming down after they receive education about pain. And when you think about it, it's really not that weird. If we go into a math test and we're wholly unprepared, we're probably going to be stressed and anxious. If we go into a math test and we have studied and we know the information and we've done it repetitively, we're going to be much more likely to have a success. The same is true for pain. When people understand pain, they have less pain. It's not a standalone treatment. That's super important because some people think, oh, I could just learn about it and we're good. No, because we also need what are the treatments we need to create safety and calm in the nervous system. Exercise is a huge, super important piece. If we were to choose only two things, it would be exercise and education. And the reason that exercise is so important, one of the reasons, is because when we exercise, we are creating blood flow, and nerves love blood flow and movement. So if they're getting that, then they start to calm down. Sleep is huge for pain. I was just having a conversation with a client earlier today, and I'm like, how's your sleep? And she's like, I want to sleep more. She's taking these different meds. And then I said, well, what about some of your sleep hygiene? She's like, yeah, I do what I want. And I was like, okay. And like, check the box of all the things we wouldn't recommend. And I said, well, are there areas that you're interested in considering changing? She's like, no. And I'm like, all right. So I'm tabling that conversation because it's not important to her. And at the same time, sleep is a huge driver of pain. And then our last one is having goals.
Okay. I wrote it down. Nerves love blood flow, and just thinking about those new compression type boots that, endurance athletes are using. It's just like getting the blood flow. And I think that, but it's so hard for people to get back to exercising because yes, we think something is wrong. We don't know if we can be exercising. So unless, I guess maybe when we're working with the specialist that can guide us, no, it's okay to do this type of exercises. What would be your advice for how can we learn to discern for ourselves? Yeah, I can exercise through this pain. It doesn't feel good, but I need to keep moving versus like, no, I have to chill.
Well, if we have a fracture, please don't exercise. You can exercise another body part and still calm the nervous system down. So if you have a broken wrist and you're in a cast or a splint, you can walk to your heart's content. You could probably even do elbow planks and do some leg things that way. So movement is key. And if you can't move one particular body part because of a fracture, where can you get creative and still get movement to promote healing and decreasing that sensitivity? Now, a common problem that we have with many athletes in particular is that they push through pain. They go, 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 go. Weekend warrior, have you heard of that description? Right?
Mhm.
So the weekend warrior, they go, 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 and then they crash, and then they recover in time for the next weekend, and they go, 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 and then they crash. Well, the reality is that's not really good for anyone. But if you have a sensitized nervous system, that's going to really actually make your system more sensitive. Because remember, pain is information. Your brain is giving you that experience to get you to pay attention, and it wants to alert you. So if you continue to ignore it, it's going to keep giving you that message.
Mhm.
So the opposite is also true. Some people are like, well, I can't do anything until all my pain is gone. So now we have the opposite extreme. Well, we also know when people stop moving and stop doing, it also increases the sensitivity of their pain. So the beautiful middle ground is my favorite word, which rhymes with fudge, and that is nudge. So when you experience pain, we want you to get clear. Okay, did I just get hit over the head with a baseball? Then maybe I need to stop. But if I'm feeling a little pain in my ankle and I'm running, well, what happens if you run for another 10, 20, 30 seconds? Maybe it's just going to go away. And maybe if it continues, then you're going to walk and see how that goes. And then maybe if it continues, maybe then you're going to take a pause. And so rather than just doing this all or nothing approach, we really want to nudge it. It's no different than training. If you can run 5 miles, you're not going to go run 25 miles. You're going to go 5 to 6 to 9. You're going to do it progressively. The same is true for increasing function and decreasing pain.
Yeah. 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 Well, I learned through endurance sports that as soon as I start like feeling the pain while exercising. If in many cases, like if I kind of stop or back off or start thinking about the pain, it definitely gonna get worse. And but if I kind of say, no, it's fine, I'll just continue, it's fine. And in 99% of the cases, it goes away. Like as if like the alarm went on because the body knows, okay, she's kind of pushing it. And then I was like, no, it's fine. And something happens, like the brain kind of whatever was trying to stop me. It's like I was like, oh, it's fine. Or my hip flexor starts kind of like pulling at the end of long run. I was like, it's gonna heal tomorrow. And all of a sudden, as soon as I say it's gonna be fine tomorrow. Yeah, I know it hurts, but it's fine. It disappears, like, or it subsides. It doesn't get worse. I can, continue running.
You want a potential explanation for that?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing you said is you feel the pain because the body knows. I'm gonna word shift that to
Okay.
you feel pain because your brain is creating that experience. So
Okay.
that's number one. And your brain is creating that experience based on a real or a perceived threat. You give good, healthy input into your nervous system. It's going to be okay tomorrow. And your brain's like, oh, okay, I guess this isn't a 5-alarm fire after all. And then you don't have pain.
Okay.
And there are times where we do need to stop. So it's not super clear. It's not black and white, and it's so many variables. However, what you talked about is saying, oh, I'm going to be fine tomorrow. That's tapping into our mirror neurons. Have you ever heard of mirror neurons?
But more in the context of social environment and mimicking kind of what's happening around us, I don't think not in the context that you're referring to right now.
Yeah, so you unintentionally mentioned how mirror neurons help you or harm you in that last conversation.
Mhm.
So, about 25% of the 80 billion neurons in your brain are mirror neurons, which means they respond to what you think, what you say, what you feel, what you do.
Mhm.
So, in your example, you felt pain and you're like, oh, if I start to think about that pain or if I stop, it gets worse. So your mirror neurons are responding to that. Oh, when you feel pain, you think, oh, it'll be gone tomorrow. 25% of your neurons are responding to that as well. So for my clients, if they get into that deep, dark hole of the pain's never going away, I'm getting worse, they're actually reinforcing that with 25% of their neurons. Mantras are so important. If they shift, they find a statement that makes them feel calmer and safe. There's some that we give clients. Hurt doesn't equal harm. Alliteration is helpful. Exercise. My favorite is motion is lotion. I can feel sore but safe. So we want clients to have these mantras that they can interrupt those experiences of pain when they are safe. When they're
Yeah.
not safe, we need them to heed those experiences of pain.
Yeah, I can think right now that actually a year ago I started training for a race that I realized like I didn't feel like I signed up, but I realized I overcommitted. I don't want to train and usually love training, but I couldn't back off. Like I was just like, no, I'm gonna do it. And then I had an accident. I fell and I cracked my rib. And typically, if I cracked my rib while I was training for a race that I really want to do, I would be like, this is not a problem, we're gonna heal, it's gonna heal. I literally felt relief. I was like, oh, great, I don't have to train.
Isn't that fascinating?
And I was like, I can't tell
That's
this to anybody.
fascinating.
This is my dirty secret. I'm like, oh, and on top of that, I can miss some work because I don't feel like working either.
But isn't that fascinating, Julia? A fractured rib is a fractured rib. And in case one, you're like, no, 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 I'm going to keep running. And in case two, you're like, oh no, this is an excuse to stop the race and stop working. It's just a fractured rib. So this is an indicator helping people understand that tissue damage is not the only driver of pain. And in fact, it's a very small piece of it.
Yeah, it's like that decoupling of yes, there is a tissue damage and there is an experience, right? It's of having a
Well,
pain experience that, a healing experience.
and 30% of people who have chronic pain have never had an injury or a surgery, and they still have debilitating pain.
So what's the
30%.
percentage again?
30%.
Okay.
So we really have to disconnect tissue damage and pain.
So is that kind of that another story of another nail?
Oh, you'd like to hear the two nails?
Yes, I think that makes, I love stories. I want as many stories as we can share with people.
Yes, absolutely. So, the first nail is a construction worker who in South Korea, he went to the emergency room with a headache or wherever he went, and they took an x-ray and they said, hello. And they said, where did you get this 4-inch nail straight through his forehead? And he thought, well, maybe like the best he could remember was that 4 years earlier, he was on a job site and he was working with his nail gun and it jammed. So he looked at his nail gun and felt a puff of air and was like, whatever, goes back to work. End of story. 4 years later, they find this nail in his forehead. I think that a nail through your skull counts as tissue damage, but he had no pain. That's story number one. Story number two, also a construction worker. We can learn so much from them. So this guy was walking on the job site.
Because they have access to a lot of nails.
Yes. And he stepped on a nail, and the nail went all the way through his boot and all the way out the top of his boot, and he was screaming in pain. And so they took him very carefully to the hospital. They took the boot off so carefully because they didn't know the extent of nerve or blood vessel damage. You know what they found? Not even a scratch, because the nail went right between two toes. Was his pain real?
Yes.
A little more confidently. All pain is real
All pain is real.
based on the level of real or perceived threat.
So basically, like he would be example that somebody would say this was in your head, right? Like because there was no, it was really his perception, that perception of the thread. But when you say the pain is real because you put it under functional MRI and all whatever lights up in the brain indicating it's pain will light up. Is that
Yeah, and
what
he
it
felt
is?
it. He
And
felt
he
that.
felt it. Yes, of course he
Felt
felt.
it.
Yes.
He felt it. You cannot. So I often have this
Yeah.
happen. People are like, well, I just don't feel it anymore. Well, pain is always a physical and an emotional experience. It's always both together. We can't separate them. So if you don't feel something physical, then you don't have pain. People are like,
Okay,
oh, I got
so
it. I have it. I just don't feel it. That's not a thing because pain is physical and sensory and emotional.
yeah. So I guess when before we were trying to have a conversation on LinkedIn about physical versus emotional pain, my context for that was more that if the threat, real or perceived, is physical threat to my physical body in terms of like it's a childbirth or I'm jumping off the, bungee jumping, like there is a physical activity or physical sensation like that affects the visible thing of my body versus an emotional danger, like and I would say like one of the scary things, like for example like going through separation and divorce would be, and like I'm not gonna die. I know, like I talked to my therapist at that time. She's like, and I was like, but I feel I'm gonna die. And she's like, you are not gonna die. And I was like, you're right. Like I know I'm not gonna die physically, but it feels I'm gonna die. And so
What did you feel? when you felt you were going
Oh,
to?
they say in panic if somebody is like holding a gun and just gonna shoot me, like in the live, like it's kind of, and
What
once
did you
I,
feel in your body?
well, that anxiety, that it's that, like that panic, shortness of breath,
Shortness
tension.
of breath is a physical experience.
Yes.
So your emotional experience, the fear of separation,
Mm.
one of the ways it showed up physically for you was shortness of breath.
Okay, my mind is jumping somewhere else right now because that's actually, it's a good point that all the emotions we're feeling, or we technically can, if we able to place it somewhere in our body, there is a physical. As a coach, when I work with clients and if I ask them where they feel it in their body, that's specifically, if we want to go specifically to that emotion, not everybody can name. And some people say, I never feel things in my body. I can know, don't even ask me that question. So is it just the way people, their connection to the body, or is it different way if they're feeling, somebody is feeling an emotion? And I typically can easily say it's in my throat, it's in my chest, it's in my, like any sort of part. And a lot of people can name where, if they zone in to their body, where they're actually feeling that. But some can't. And is it just a matter of interoception, kind of being able to connect, or it just people feel things differently? On the emotional side, I'm totally jumping into the emotional side right now.
Um, I don't often ask my clients where in their body they're feeling an emotion. I know that's valuable in some frameworks, which is fine.
Mhm.
For me, it's more about helping them understand that we cannot disconnect physical and emotional because
Yeah.
pain is always both. So for them to understand that I feel pain in my back and it makes me scared I'm going to lose my job, there's a physical and an emotional connection. I feel nervous about to get off the high dive and my legs are shaking, then we have the emotional and the physical. So, yeah, I don't get into that a lot.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's a different type of like it's you work, you always start. Yeah, I had to share.
Yeah,
But maybe
I'm aware of it, and I'll be honest with you, I was one of those people until like 2 or 3 years ago. They'd always at where you feel like I have no idea what you're talking about. Drop into your body. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can't you just feel it in your body? I'm like, no idea what you are
okay.
talking about. And so I think probably a lot of my clients aren't able to do that either. They are able to connect that physical pain and emotional pain go together.
Okay. Okay.
And think about this. This is another example I like. So, say you sprain your ankle on a vacation. You've got 2 days left. It's the most glorious vacation you've ever been on. And you want to enjoy those last 2 days. Think about the pain you might or might not experience. Now, let's have you do the exact same ankle sprain, the exact same tissue damage in a job you hate, where you are abused. You are 1 hour into a 14-hour shift. Do you think your pain might be different? Because
Yeah.
emotions impact pain.
Yeah. So what is it like? Is it when we're in stress already? Um, it's our nervous system is already what exactly is, it's kind of different from my experiences, like, oh, I don't want to train and I don't want to work, so I'm just gonna, take some time off. Which probably contributed how long it took me to recover. But in the cases that people are stressed in a stressful job environment versus a vacation, and how they experience the pain, what is it actually that affects? Like, is it their positive emotions or the nervous system?
That's part of the biopsychosocial model is that we know that our environment can influence the experience of pain. Where we grew up, how we grew up, even different cultures experience pain differently. The Japanese culture I think it's their tradition, don't quote me, that men are not to express pain even to a healthcare provider. So that's their culture. So we need to know how we're going to help somebody if their culture limits their ability to express it. And then there are some cultures where they're much more expressive and emotive. Does that mean that this man in Japan is not having pain and this person, this other culture, is over the top and ridiculous? No, it means we need to pay attention to environmental influences as well as whatever's going on with their tissues. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
very
that's why it's so important when you say you need to know the client's story,
right.
like not just the story, what they believe about the current pain and the story about the current pain, but it's also like what is their general, I guess, experience, like in terms of their environment. I remember you sharing something about kids that play competitive sports. They have different rates of chronic
They're
pain.
they're less likely to develop chronic pain because they learn that they get hurt and they heal. They get hurt, they heal. Tissues get damaged, they heal because our bodies are really amazing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, when kids learn that they can experience pain and tissue damage, whether or not they're the same at that moment, and they heal, this is a great growing opportunity for them. The toddler who falls on the sidewalk, often they're ready to just get up, but then they look, mom, babysitter, dad, and they get that overreactive face. That's when the kid cries. When they've gotten
Mhm.
input from their environment that, oh, this is dangerous, versus, hey, let's go, let's get up, let's get you to the playground. And if there's really something we need to address, we're going to figure it out. But
Yeah,
let's help them recognize that a fall and a scrape on the knee is not the world's worst experience.
yeah, yeah. So, um, so everything we talked about today, there was a lot of insight that will help people who had injuries or any surgeries, or like any accidents, and they are recovering from the tissue damage, and they know, oh, how I think my environment, maybe even type of movie I'm going to watch, funny movie versus some scary
I like
frightening
that.
movie. They know that they have agency over their healing, and experience of their healing, while they can, maybe even the tissue will take the same time to heal, but their experience will be different in terms of how they're going to be dealing with that pain, and more likely to exercise. And what I'm curious about is that you mentioned, was it 30% of people that didn't have a tissue damage or surgery, and they're in pain? Like that, it's, to me, it's that physical manifestation of emotional pain or trauma, or like is it part of the work that you're doing as well? Is it comment on that?
Yes. So I'm going to say again that all pain is physical and emotional. Emotional pain
I'm
doesn't.
gonna tattoo it on my forehead.
This is my mission, to help people understand pain better.
If you can convince me and I believe it, we're good. Okay, sorry, carry
That
on.
might be my challenge, Julia. So they've had an emotional experience, trauma, and it's showing up in different ways. So for one person, it might show up as digestive issues. For somebody else, it might be mood and concentration. For somebody else, it's sore muscles. For somebody else, it's fatigue or chronic fatigue syndrome. For somebody else, it might be chronic Lyme. For somebody else, it might be Ehlers-Danlos. There are so many of these chronic experiences that people have that we can now tie to a sensitized nervous system as being a piece. And sometimes it's a big piece and sometimes it's a small piece. So someone who has not had an injury or a surgery can have hardcore, debilitating pain. That is 100% real. So I'm going to try and help you disconnect a little bit more. This is actually, we call this the Hibbean theory, nerves that fire together, wire together. But what we want to do is we want to break apart that belief that it's physical or emotional, because nerves that wire apart fire apart. So darn it, I forgot my example.
Okay, well, for now, I'm just going to give you my excuse. I grew up in the Soviet Union talking about. Okay, I blame everything on my Soviet upbringing. If there's any
Oh, that's pretty
issues,
funny. All
you
right.
can
Hibbean,
psychoanalyze that, like, no, we're tough and stoic. And
right. So that is your cultural upbringing, right? So that has become a part of your fabric, and so that influences how you experience pain.
yeah, and also it's on one hand, stoic and tough is part of it, and also almost like being happy was not okay. Like if you smiling and always happy, people like, what's wrong with you? Are you dumb? Like if you were smart, you knew how tough the life is. So if somebody asks how you doing, and you're like, I'm doing great, they're like, what? What's happening? So it's so, again, it was, a long time ago, and but
That
it took me a while to like, oh, it's okay to show, like, it's okay to be happy, and it's okay when I'm happy to actually tell people I'm happy.
right. And so your culture and your environment influence how you deal with pain now. Is it necessarily right, wrong, better, worse? No, it's information that is valuable as you are navigating, and valuable for you when you're with somebody who is more emotive about pain, rather than, a judgment of, oh my gosh, why are you expressing pain? More that connection and curiosity of, okay, I know that all pain is real. What can I do to help you? Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Do you remember your example now?
No.
Okay. So
I'm
I'm
really
gonna
there.
bring another example of emotional and physical pain. One pain. Maybe, is it like chocolate milk? I remember you talking about
Yeah,
chocolate milk.
exactly.
Is it the chocolate milk?
You can't separate, that wasn't my story, but you cannot separate the chocolate from the milk once you put it together.
Okay.
Pain is always emotional and physical. There are 9 different parts of your brain that participate in any pain experience. And that includes the emotional part of our brain as well as all the other parts of our brain too. It's always connected.
Yeah, so okay, I'll give you another example to comment on.
All
Like
right.
I am typically a very high energy person. Like I have energy. I'm like energize a bunny or Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. Like I'm typically like I'm high energy. So for me to be like, tired, like I have to do a lot of things to wear myself out. And but then I had an experience of loss, grief, like a loss of a person. And I, for the first time in my life, I couldn't get out of bed. And like, well, I could get up enough to like do something for my child, but then as soon as she goes, somewhere, I lie down and like I just can't. I can't get up. Like I physically like cannot. I have no energy. And I also at that time I also possibly realized like it's like, okay, I lost people before. I had a lot of losses. How come I never felt it? Is if like it was maybe not allowed, don't feel, don't the Soviet thing, don't feel, it's fine. And it felt like it hit me like everything that but again, like I was like, what is this? What is happening to me? And I ended up working with a grief recovery coach. Actually, just coincidentally, I met somebody that was like, perfect. I was like, I am in so much grief, I can't function. And it's like, for me not to function, it was, so what was that?
What's the actual question? What is grief? What was the energy
Yeah,
loss?
like it was like, again, like when the topic of convincing me there was only one pain.
Okay, well,
So my pain was nobody hit me. I was not run over by a truck or bus that I'm injured and I cannot get up. But I felt like I was hit by a bus, like I can't get up.
okay, so you have experienced that emotional pain is also physical. And yet it's hard to recognize that they always go together.
Yeah.
Something you've experienced it, you know it from experience, but cognitively, you want them to be separate.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess maybe because I'm tying it in with if it's a physical threat, if physical, I'm in physical danger versus I'm emotional danger. Because maybe maybe it comes from um when we're learning about managing fear, there is a lot of stories about how, like, yes, we have this fear response because we needed to pay attention. Like we have naturally negativity bias, in wired in us for survival. That's like, yeah, I'm supposed to pay more attention to dangerous snake versus pretty butterfly because snake can kill me. So we kind of, for so many times, like work that we do, we didn't even get to it today, might not be positive intelligence and like coaching, that you teach people that you're not in physical danger, that yes, your brain reacts and pays, 3 times, 10 times more attention to a perceived threat of negativity rather than what's going well. So maybe that's for me where it's coming from, like learning that to decouple, maybe like it was like I'm not in physical danger, so I'm fine.
Yes, and it's not 50-50. Maybe that will help. It's not 50% physical and 50% emotional. It's whatever is needed, whatever the brain perceives is in the best interest of you, because the brain's job is to protect you. And I describe it in the case of chronic pain, it's like a helicopter parent. It's just doing its job too well.
Okay.
So, we go back to that ankle sprain on the glorious vacation. Maybe it's 95% physical and 5% emotional.
Okay.
And then in the job where you're being abused, maybe it's 98% emotional and 2% physical.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
always both.
I like the part, like what really resonated with me is what's useful, like what is needed, what's best for you. Like that, like it's like pain is a data point, right? Like and now it's like, I guess it's, back to that interpreting, like, what is the data? What is the information, right?
Right. So pain is information. We get to decide what to do with it. And in our positive intelligence world, negative experiences are information and we get to decide what to do with it. So
Yeah.
another example is, say you sprain your ankle just, walking on your sidewalk. It's probably going to hurt, right? Yeah. So what if you're crossing a really busy road and you don't wait for the light to turn green and you sprain your ankle in the exact same manner, and out of the corner of your eye you see a bus hurling at you? Is your ankle going to hurt?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, no. Yeah, Jen, why
Oh,
don't we just, for our kind of like last topic,
can I finish that sentence?
yeah, sorry, yes, go ahead.
So your brain is always going to prioritize your survival. And so,
Right.
in the case of a sprained ankle versus the threat of the bus is a bigger threat to your survival. So, you likely will not feel pain. Now, you get to the other side of the street, then your brain will be like, hey, can you take care of this sprained ankle? And then you'll likely feel it.
Yeah. I had a relatively recent example when I was in some distress personally, and all of a sudden my daughter needed me in a way that I had no luxury being in my distress. And all of a sudden my distress was not important. I just kind of
Right.
I was like, okay, I quickly put myself together, healed my, emotional ankle.
Your emotional
She
ankle.
needs
I like the
me.
emotional ankle. I like it.
So this is a new term introduced on this podcast, emotional
Yeah,
ankle.
emotional ankle. That could go
I
somewhere.
sprained my emotional ankle. I really want to maybe bring this home with an introduction of positive intelligence framework, because I also know this is something you've been integrating more and making the work that you do on all fronts, both with the pain management clients and lifestyle medicine, more effective. So maybe explain to our listeners what is positive intelligence and and how you integrating that framework, how it powers now these services that you provide to your clients.
I'm just going to say this feels like pressure because you are a former positive intelligence employee asking me to define positive intelligence.
The pressure is on me because I was like, oh, am I going to explain what positive intelligence is? Oh, I have to do it perfectly.
Oh, that's so
Because
funny.
I should
I
know
will
how
tell
to.
you how I explain it to people. I explain it as harnessing your brain to be your friend far more than your enemy. And we learn that broadly, negative emotions are housed in the left side of your brain, and broadly, positive emotions are housed in the right side of your brain. And so, what we're doing is we're really helping people to first become aware and then create new neural patterns. The word is neuroplasticity, which is just a glorious thing for people going through pain as well. And so, yes, I am integrating them. There are so many amazing crossovers between both of them, but we have left side of the brain negative, right side of the brain positive. We have 9 parts of the brain that participate in the given pain experience. So, in both cases, we are trying to shift and create safety, whether it's pain science or mental fitness. Create safety with new patterns so we can soar in whatever it is we want to do.
Very good. How do you feel? Do you feel safe?
Like you're going to write to Shirzad, Jen has no idea what PQ is.
Well, but the thing is that it's what I like about positive intelligence, that it's like we refer to it as operating system, right? Like what it's so universal, how simply, radically simple it explains the brain to the mass population and teaches that those negative, like emergency, I've now started calling them emergency emotions.
Yeah, I like that
you
too.
know, can be calm down, so we don't hurt anybody and ourselves with staying in them too long. But the application of positive intelligence is endless. Like if you're applying it in health, you're applying it, like in, you know, team collaboration or conflict management. It's endless, or with kids, with parents, like anywhere. So
It's
obviously everybody will explain it differently
yeah.
based on the audience and based on the context that they are applying it to. So yes, there's many ways to explain what mental fitness and positive
You're not gonna get
intelligence
my
is.
certification revoked.
Huh?
You're not gonna get my certification revoked.
No, good, all clear.
All
Yeah.
right. Whew, good.
Okay. So I thought, I want to, like, first of all, before I go to closing, I have a couple questions for us to close off today. But I just want to, for myself and for the listeners, to highlight the importance of stories, because I know it came up a couple times, like when you were describing, when you were educating me and others and giving examples of educating your clients. Telling stories is such a powerful way to get people to understand such a complex topic that, thank you, don't ever tell those 3 names of the buckets to anybody again.
Uh,
Just tell stories.
that was so funny. You're like, I want to know. They're like, oh
I
no,
was like, my eyes started glazing over. And And also the importance of stories that we tell ourselves about our pain, or based on about our current pain, or based on our previous experience that we had or are bringing, like that the story that we tell, which basically our beliefs, beliefs about ourselves, about what pain is, the importance of that in our experience, in our healing, in our ability to, like overcome, and get back to, having a normal life or having a peak performance life, depending on where we're coming, what our goals are. Once again, you mentioned the importance of goals as well.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you for being a powerful storyteller
Thank
and
you.
and using stories so effectively. And you will have a chance to maybe tell us a couple more stories, because I have a couple questions for you.
I have no doubt that you have more questions. I like questions.
And so I want to know, and because the name of the podcast is Beyond Possible, and I want to know, what are the things in your personal life that you're willing to share with our listeners that you overcame and you thought they were not possible, they were impossible, but you went beyond those limitations that you thought you had, and what they were, and maybe some tips about how you did it.
Mm.
That's question number one.
Okay. One is a little more fun and one's a little more heavy. So I'll give you the quick fun one first. In 2020, I was in Bar Harbor, Maine, and my teenage son wanted to do rock climbing. And I'm like, sure, I'm in. I'd never done rock climbing before, other than, those silly little walls you do with kids. And so he had gone and he scaled up like Spider-Man. And then there I was, I slammed into the wall a few times. And then I was at this point and I was stuck. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. And I look up and the two of them are just chatting. And I'm like, why aren't they helping me? Like, why aren't they pulling me up? And all of a sudden I realized, well, if they're not concerned about my safety and my ability to get up, then maybe I need to buck up and figure this out. And I did. And I'll tell you what, I was so proud that I got up that cliff or whatever it was, and I didn't have to have their help. It was really a cool moment. And it was really emblazoned in my brain, like wondering why they weren't helping me, looking up, seeing them having no care in the world that had to do with me at all, and realizing they believe in you. So start to believe in yourself. So that was all just thought and mind. That's the only reason I got through that. So that was
So
pretty.
basically just hang out with people who think
Ignore
you're
you?
fine, you can handle it. They're not helicopter, you know what, do you need help?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never really thought of it that way. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So the second one, I did not think I would survive my divorce of a couple of years ago. It was a intense, contentious divorce. It took 2.5 years from start to finish. Um, I was very concerned I was going to be living in a house, and I told my bookkeeper that, and she's a wonderful human. She said, Jen, I said, I'm going to be living in a cardboard box. She said, Jen, I'll make sure it's a very nice cardboard box and I will bring you dinner. I was like, okay. But I will say there were some very, 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 very dark moments in the divorce. How did I get through? There are a lot of ways I got through. I would say the two things that got me through the most were support and actually allowing myself to let others help me, and the existence of my kids, because they kept me from going to the darkest place. That's how I did it. Told you one was heavy.
People. I feel like there is a theme, having the people, having the reason.
Having
Yeah.
and it's hard to reach out for people.
Yeah.
Like I am described as being fiercely independent, and then somebody close to me, he's like, it's a trauma response, and I'm like, oh, that.
Mhm. Yeah, I heard it recently that inability to ask for help could be, in some cases, a trauma response.
Yeah.
Like we brought up divorce twice today, so I think that will be part 2 or 3 we'll have to do on, because I think that a lot of the times, being stuck in the relationship or being stuck in getting out of relationship and rebuilding life is such a big part of, so many people can relate to it,
Mhm.
and it's life defining for sure. So
Yeah.
we'll pin it for another time.
All right, we can do that.
Okay, so I have last question is there is anything right now that you really, really want, but you think is impossible?
I'm really trying to believe it's possible. My mission, I actually have an LLC called the Beacon of Kindness because I want to really educate the world about the power of pain science and mental fitness and create a ripple of knowledge, empowerment, and kindness. And that feels like a big mission, but I really want to believe it's possible. And some days it feels more possible than others.
Well, today you took one. It's not the first domino, I know for sure, but it's one of the dominoes, one of the steps of educating and making a difference. And yeah, so I think that there's I talking to you, knowing you prior to this conversation, having this more in-depth conversation and preparing for it, I realize how little we know about pain. And I considered myself like an expert on pain because of my endurance sports. I was like, I go for pain. I know pain. We're friends now. And at the same time, so far from really understanding what pain is and what role we can play in our experience
Absolutely.
and of the pain, and when to really allow it to protect us and
Mhm.
save us from ourselves and from our daring adventures, and when to actually say that no thanks, I'm fine.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
So now I want to tell the listeners where they can find you, the best way to connect. If they listen to this, where should they head to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my physical therapy website is 180 therapy and wellness, all spelled out.com. And then the iRise for me, that is where I have the mental fitness as well as have a 6-month pain to gain coaching program. And then I also do help people navigate divorce using these same strategies. Oh, that
Wow.
website is iriseforme.com. So
Okay.
that.com.
Excellent. And we will put all your social media links. I know you're on LinkedIn. That's where we usually talk. We put it in the show notes, and so people can access it easily. So they can also find you on LinkedIn. Are you on Instagram as well, or not really?
I pounded Instagram for a long time and I got no traction, so I'm not
Hmm.
on Instagram much
Okay. So the
anymore.
website. Okay, Jen, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you really want to say before we close this first episode of the
I
podcast?
would like to say that pain is normal, living in pain is not, and my broad mission is that pain is not a life sentence.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for launching me, making
Yeah,
my dream
it is.
possible, and definitely to be continued.